This is, I'm going to give it a minute. It says live viewing is starting. And I went back on my Facebook videos and I noticed that every one of them was like, I started when it said, "You're not live," when I wasn't. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you lying to me? So like the first few minutes of all my Facebook films are not ready yet. Films, that's right, I call these films. So my microphone and my lights will be here any minute now. And I'm too lazy to hook up everything because, well, I'm not lazy. Right now I'm tired because sun eclipse, new moon, and last night I shifted to the 11th perspective, and I'm like, I'm resting and sleeping. And I had a once upon a time, there was a race of people called the one the One-sters. Is that what I called them? The One-sters. Trying to remember what they were called. One-ists. That's it. They were one-ists. They were one-ists. Once upon a time, there was a race called One-ists. And this was a race that was only a population of one, including the god. And the One-ist was a 5-year-old child. And she was all alone because she was a One-ist and there was only one like her. And she was the goddess of story. And she was the goddess of manifestation. And she was the goddess of imagination. So that everything she thought of became everything that she believed, became everything that she said. And that was her story. And being a god, the only one, she was very much alone. And she was infinity. They say one is the loneliest number. And she was very lonely. And she was infinite. And she was story and imagination. What would you do with infinity? The beautiful thing about infinity plus story is that there is quite literally an infinite number of possibilities. And when you love story that much, so long as you can imagine it, it can be. So, every one of her molecules, every bit of her DNA became a dimension. Because she was one, and she was we, and she was many. And every one of her molecules became a story. She played with her dolls for quite a while, all alone. After a while, she was more lonely than ever. So she gave the dolls something called free will. And she gifted them with a gift of 12. 1, 12, and infinity, to be exact. But she loved mystery. And she loved riddles. And she loved story. And she loved above all imagination. So she couldn't just give them 1, 12, infinity. Oh no. She gave them free will and then left them a trail of cookie crumbs and Easter eggs to allow them to figure it out for themselves. And she gifted them with curiosity. And she gifted them with adventure. And she gifted them with literally everything that she was because she made them in her own image. And her image was a one-ist who loves imagination, play, story, and then she just sat back and watched the riddle unfold. But there was one thing that she loved more than all, and that is dimensional play. Because she was a god, she played a lot with dimensional play, and what better way to hide dimension than hiding it within the perspective that we all have of our imaginations within our own story. So that while we lived life and we played around with our imagination, we had no idea that when we make believe, we're actually creating new dimensions. Pretty fucking cool, right? We're so busy looking up and out, and we're so busy looking down and in, that we never stop and just look around. And that's when I realized we're molecules. Molecules are sentient. And this is what a molecule looks like. I am a molecule. And I am the nucleus. And I require a positive and a negative charge along with a neutral, because a positive and a negative cancel them out. So I need a neutral charge. So I'm the nucleus and I'm the molecule, and I have a negative charge. I'm the positive charge. And yesterday, last night, I found the neutral charge. And I went, not two, not binary, not couple, 3, because we're molecules. There's people screaming, you need to be a hermit, you need to be alone. And there's people screaming, you need 2, you need a couple, you need a partner. We're molecules, we need 3. But what happens when a one-ist becomes prejudice? And that's what's happened. We are one-ists. Every one of us is a one-ist. And we have become prejudiced. The problem is when a one-ist develops prejudice, because the one-ist is all parts of themselves in one, because 1 and 12 is infinity, the one-ist ends up tearing itself apart. Not a part, 12 parts. The one-ist tears its 12 parts. Because you're prejudiced and you're a one-ist. There are 12 stages, there are 12 lessons, there are 12 rules. There are 12 perspectives, there are 12 levels. When I first entered the 7th perspective, I could see that there was definitely a thing that existed outside of the matrix. But then at the 8th perspective, I could see things. I could see all 12 perspectives. I could see the dimensions. I did not realize I was looking at the dimensions. I thought I was looking at their perspectives. So at level 8, I could see dimension. And then at level 9, I could see all the moving networks of energy. I could see the energy network. And at 10, I could see how it all moved, how it layered itself. And at 11, I could see physics. Last night I saw physics. I still see it. It's extraordinary. And then I realized that we're learning wrong, and that at age 12, the 12th perspective, we are supposed to learn music theory, because that allows us to continue the education that we abandoned. There were 12 subjects in the University of Alexandria. Alexandria was a city of thinkers. Authenticity City is the new Alexandria. That's really what it is. I'm rebuilding Alexandria. The ancient city housed a university, and it housed the library, which we're all familiar with. The lighthouse, the beacon, was its signal to the world, come to me. We are literally the capital of knowledge and thinking. That's why they had the lighthouse at Pharos. The lighthouse of Pharos was literally the lighthouse of Alexandria. Pharos was, I believe, the Greek word for Alexandria. So the lighthouse of Pharos was actually the lighthouse of Alexandria, a beacon literally saying, come to me, come home. And it was the capital of knowledge. It was the home of thinkers. If you wanted to be a thinker, you went to Alexandria. Alexandria lived within its own culture, kind of like the Vatican did. 112 infinity. Now, why do I keep thinking 3.14? I can't get over that. It's there. 3.14 has something to do with 12. It's 1 times pi times infinity. That's really what it is. And I can't figure out the 0.14. That's why I need a physicist. So, New York City has a giant beacon in it called the Statue of Liberty. And it says, come home. Bring me all the people you don't want. Literally, she's my lady. Her name is Freedom. There's a lot of similarities between Alexandria and New York City. So it's really appropriate that I am building New Alexandria here. Now, Alexandria had something else to it. There was a plaque on the wall. Not on the wall, but like it was carved into the marble of the university. So when you got to the university, you read Plato's words. The university was built by Plato, designed by him. And let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls. Now, I'm going to show you our perspective, and then I'm going to show you the truth. The Library of Alexandria. Alexandria itself was under war many times, and it was destroyed. There were about 7 fires total. And at one point, the library was finally completely burned down and destroyed. And when that happened, the university was destroyed. Alexandria fell. Bhatzbai, the empress. The last time anyone saw her, she was stripped naked, put in gold chains, and was forced to walk naked in the streets of her own city as the Roman imperialist looked down on her. No one has any idea whatever happened to her since. Bhatzbai. She, literally, was Queen of Alexandria. That was the end of Alexandria. The thing is, there was a subject that was taught at the university that was secret, and it was lost. The lost subject. Can you name any famous teachers? Just teachers. Can you do it? Think of any famous teacher. I can do it. There's only 4. Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Christ. All 4 of these men had one thing in common. They all attended the University of Alexandria. We see Christ at infancy, 1. We see him again at 12, and we see him again at infinity. You're going to notice that formula coming up a lot. At 1, we saw his birth. At 12, where was he? This bothered me when I was a child. Where was Christ when he was 12? There's one little passage. Where was he? His mother, according to the story, looked all over for him. She was terrified. She couldn't find him. She found him entertaining a bunch of philosophers with his theories. Now, I remember being told this story when I was 4, and I remember them basically brushing it away like, yep, that's where he was when he was 12, that's how we found him, and then there was nothing again. He shows up in his 30s talking about all of his theories about being nice and his word. But then they ignored that too and then talked about his death. I always thought that was very morbid and missed the point. He did not want. Now he got the same message. Tell it on the mountain. Go tell my story. He got the same message as I did. Tell my story. Only they botched his story. They talked about his death. That wasn't his story. I read the Bible many times. His story was not about how he's died and resurrected again. No, you're telling the wrong story. His story was his words. The words of Christ in red, read those, because that's his story. People instead read about the gory details of his death. Irrelevant, really irrelevant. Focus on what he actually said. So that's what I studied, the words of Christ in red. So I read them. And I went, wow, because I studied theology, I went, well, that's Buddhism. So I thought he was a Buddhist for a while. But I can't get over the fact that he was talking to those philosophers when he was 12. Now, I know what happens at 12 years old because I attended the Library of Alexandria. That was my university. So I know what happens at the 12th. More importantly, what would a 12-year-old be saying to attract the interest and attention of all the philosophers in the entire University of Alexandria? What would a 12-year-old be saying to attract their attention? Interesting, right? So yeah, I was really interested in the Library of Alexandria. So I pulled up their curriculum. You can do that. You can look up the Ancient Library of Alexandria's curriculum. You can look at Plato and what he taught there. And he says, let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls. And I went, well, okay, I guess I have to study geometry. So I did. But I did something that most people don't do. I had already studied, by the time I was 15, all of the other subjects that everybody else doesn't pay attention to, like theater, story, writing, play, dance, and music theory. So that by the time I actually sat down and got to geometry, music theory was next. And then I studied mathematics, and then a little bit of physics, not much, and then geometry. And I remember the moment my brain changed. I remember the day. It was the day I understood proofs. It was the day my brain unlocked. It literally clicked. And I went, I understand. That's when my education began. I was 12 years old. No, I wasn't. I was 15 years old. And it was when I was studying music theory and mathematics and philosophy. And when those three things combined, when I went back to geometry, I understood. And suddenly I could see in dimension. It's called dimensional thinking. Dimensional thinking is what I do. It's something I have done since that particular moment. And it is something that you have to unlock, but you have to follow an educational formula in order to unlock it. Once you unlock it, you can see the dimensions. Dimensions are perspectives. It's fascinating. But there was a lot more to it than this. I thought that you just had to study geometry, and then you could get into Alexandria. Until last night, I realized that in the first year of life, we are supposed to be studying theater, play. And then we are supposed to be studying story at 2 years old. And then we're supposed to be dancing. And then we're supposed to be studying painting. Then we study reading, writing. And then we study music. We're only 5 years old at this point. But then we completely derail it. We think things like, no 5-year-old can understand physics. No 5-year-old can understand geometry or philosophy. So we don't give them that because we don't think they can, because we doubt them. And then we take all the fun and the play and the theater outside of our schools. You know, I noticed this. I remember kindergarten being so much fun because of all the beautiful colors and the numbers and the beautiful graphics. By the time you're in second grade, all of that's gone and it's not fun anymore. And by the time you're in 5th grade, you hate going to school and all the colors are gone. Why do you think that is? My 15-year-old, 16-year-old tells me every day, I hate school. And she has to go sit in a gray public building with shitty lighting, be exposed to no color, no play. It's just work and information. And I'm going, do you have any idea how people learn? They've taken the joy out of education. So now people hate learning. So you see this massive decline of learning. It's fascinating, isn't it? As the decrease of learning continues, people stop educating themselves because they associate it with tedious, boring, and misery. What have they done? I realized last night that the phrase, "Let no man who has not studied geometry enter these walls," was referring to the linear line-up. It was a point in your educational time. Let me see if I can get that to focus. So that by the time you learned geometry, you had learned all of these topics. It was a requirement. It was a requirement. Here it is, a university that you don't pay to enter. It was a free university. Alexandria was free, accessible to all. It had one requirement. You had prerequisites. You had to become informed and mastered in other subjects prior to entering geometry. And it's all written down in the curriculum. Theater, art. Well, there are 9 muses. So they literally had a course for all 9 muses. And then they had 3 sciences. They had physics. They had astronomy. And they had physics, astronomy. You've already studied geometry, remember that. Medicine, if I recall correctly. Physics, astronomy, and medicine. And then they had history, communication, and philosophy. Now, this is where I thought it was really interesting, because communication was about 4 of the 5 muses. Actually, communication English was the arts. All of the arts. It was theater, it was play. And then there was philosophy. Now, I thought when I first studied Alexandria that philosophy was the primary subject. Then I thought that all of the subjects were taught there. Then I realized, oh no, there's a ladder learning, there's ladders. It's not sit down and study 10 subjects at one time, and then sit down and study the next subject at one time, and then study the 3rd grade level of all 10 subjects at the same time. That's stupid. No. It's, you're 1 year old, you need to learn shapes in geometry. Oh, you're 2 years old, you need to learn imagination and theater. Puppet socks are very effective during the 2nd year. Oh, you're 3, adventure, that needs to be your lesson. Let's go LARPing. You're 4, let's imagine future. Let's play with story. 5, let's do reading and writing. Let's do mathematics. And then let's study philosophy. Now you can start learning who are you. And if you were to follow these curriculums, it's literally 1 subject per year. So that by the time you reach geometry, you will have fulfilled the curriculum. Now you can enter Alexandria. And sure enough, as soon as you start studying in Alexandria, you unlock dimensional thinking. The subject that Alexandria taught was not philosophy. It was perspective, which is why you had to study all of the subjects. The secret subject that they were teaching is the lost subject of perspective, otherwise known as dimensional thinking. But there's only 5 people who studied, and me. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Christ, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a dropout. He studied for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then he basically went and became an imperialist because he hadn't learned or internalized the core ethics. He did what everybody else is doing with spiral dynamics. He wiped his ass with it. If you Google spiral dynamics, you will see a lot of people wiping their ass with it. Spiral dynamics was lesson 1 of dimensional thinking and the lost perspective, the lost subject. When the library and the university tore down, the subject was lost with it. It was highly secretive because when you enter dimensional thinking, you see things and you know things. And when you see and you know things, people think you're a god. Look at Christ. And then when people think you're a god, they kill you. Look at Socrates and Christ. So then you get to the ultimate truth. Who are we? What are we? Where are we going? And why are we here? And you've got all these people going, I I have the answer because I know the archetype and it's God. And they all give their opinion right, and you get 12 opinions. But they haven't studied dimensional thinking or perspective. And they're miserable. But they're miserable because they haven't studied dimensional thinking. The whole, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So, when you get this information, and all you have to do is teach them, and all you have to do is explain one thing to them, and they will all wake up. Because you see it, because you can see in dimension. Because you see the past, the present, and the future at the same time. Because you see infinity. Because you see the beginning and the end. And you finally understand how the beginning and the end are the same thing and what infinity really truly means because you studied dimensional thinking and perspective. And suddenly you know what the problem is, and you know that one sentence is going to fix this all. But there's a problem. It will cause a panic. And that will cause a war. So how do you do it in such a way that you don't cause a panic? So I look back into old Ireland, and the number one concern is don't scare the children, because that's the problem. You cannot scare the children. Now, the best way to show the children that everything's fine is by making them laugh. Laughter is the number one thing children will mirror the adults. So you have to keep the adults calm. You have to keep the adults safe. You make them laugh. Because when the children see the adults laughing, they'll know everything is fine. But you got to make the adults laugh. And then you have to take away their fear of the unknown by showing them what it is they're actually walking into. If aliens actually did show up, the panic that would the panic, the fear. So you have to do this by eliminating the fear, eliminating the confusion, and leading them at the same time while making them laugh. How do you do it? Now, Christ and Judas, who both studied perspective theory, perspective psychology, and dimensional thinking, both knew this exact problem. It's been long known that Christ and Judas had a thing, a secret. No one knows what the secret was. No one knows what they discussed. The theory is that Christ and Judas planned Christ's death with Christ's consent, and that Judas would take the fall for it, and that Christ would have to endure that kind of physical torture. I believe I know what their plan was, because I'm in the same conundrum right now. I'm going, how do you show a people what we are? That we are one-ists, and we are individual molecules, all belonging to a little girl who's 5 years old, who's going through the process, and everything is just a factor of 12. And because you can see all the dimensions, there are some dimensions that are 1, there are some dimensions that are 12, there are some dimensions that are 9, there are some dimensions that are 3. And I'm an 11, living in a 4 system with a molecule that's 5 years old. That's why I have a colorful straw in my drink, because I'm 5. And in psychology, when we heal, one of the things that we are taught is you have to accept all the parts of you. Well, there are 12 parts, 12 ages to be exact. But when you're a one-ist and you become prejudiced, that's the problem. A one-ist cannot afford to be prejudiced. So the real goal is to release your prejudice. But people don't know what prejudice looks like. I do, because I'm a dimensional thinker, and I can see what the prejudice has done. Oh, we have a virus. We are a one-ist. And the one-ist has a virus, and the virus is prejudice. It's part of the learning program. It comes around from the third perspective. So once you get over this, you heal and you're fine. But you really need to understand that you're a one-ist with a prejudice. So I thought, it would be really awesome just telling this through story, because story makes people laugh, And story is fun, and story communicates in ways that everyone understands. That's why we tell story. And she is the goddess. I am the goddess. We are the goddess of story. So why not? The thing is, this is so highly logical that no one can argue with me about it. It's too logical. It's too precise. And all I can see is 1 times 12 times infinity. And why can't I get my head out of... I see things. And I just want to sit down and write mathematics and stuff that I don't even understand. You see, I studied so much that while I came up with half the shit I came up with, I kept thinking things of, yeah, I studied this. This is just subconscious crap that I'm pulling from research and studies that I did when I was 12. Except I'm out of subjects now. I never studied this shit, and I know it. And I'm looking at it going, okay, so now logically I have no choice but to accept this, that I am seeing dimensions to the point where I can now see subjects and understand them and write them without actually having any knowledge of them whatsoever because I can see physics. It's quite extraordinary. And I could see that we were molecules. And here's the thing, we don't realize that molecules are sentient. Molecules are sentient, and this is what they look like up close and personal. I'm a molecule. So are you. Molecules require 3 parts, not 2. We were binary because we're one-ists and we're prejudiced. 1 0, 1 0, 1 0. There's that mind again. No, it's not 1 0. It's 1 12. So, I'm going to tell you a story. And I will tell you the truth because it's fucking hilarious. But I can't tell you here. No, I gotta wait. I gotta wait. And the reason why I have to wait is because rule number 1, we cannot scare the children. And rule number 2, we have to keep the adults calm and feeling safe. But when I say everything's going to be just fine, really, everything is going to be so fucking fantastic very, very soon. Christ came up with a plan that if I rise from the dead, they'll see my true power. And then they'll understand, but he was dealing with second perspectives. I'm not. I'm at the edge of the 5th perspective. Now, the 5th perspective is open-minded enough to listen. But Christ missed a few points. He forgot the children. Ironic, isn't it, that Christ forgot the children? You've got to keep the adults calm to keep the children calm. Because that's really what we all really truly love is our children. So yeah. Got to keep the children calm. So I'm going to be thinking a lot. And right now I just want to play. And I just want to laugh. And I just want to tell stories. Authenticity City is the new Alexandria. It is a free city with free citizenship. It is free. It is the center of thinkers. It is the age of authenticity. It is an abstract city. All cities are. All cities are abstract. All locations, all territories are abstract. It's all in our mind. The society and the rat race are abstract concepts. So, if we're going to have one abstract concept to follow, well, then I'm going to show you Authenticity City. And Authenticity City centers around 3 parts. Play, which is actually learning. resources, building and creating. That's imagination. And healing. And in the center, this all revolves around the ship of state. In the healing, we focus on the self, in play and learning. We focus on community and our relatability. And in our resources, we focus on imagination and what we can create. Because when you're a god of a 5-year-old girl who's really lonely because she's a one-ist, imagination is a huge part of the curriculum. Take a look at the link below, and it provides you with a directory of Authenticity City. Go ahead and take a look through everything. See if there's any parts of it that you're interested in. I say the 4 pillars. I'm going to leave it like that for now, but I believe it's 3 pillars with a centered point. Not 4 pillars, 3 with a point. Yeah. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.